Jaya Golanitai, Jaya Golanitai, Golanitai, Jaya Golanitai. Jaya Golanitai, Jaya Golanitai, Golanitai, Jaya Golanitai. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gora Haribol, 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 Nitai Gora Haribol. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stota Shata Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki. All glories to the assembly devotees. All glories to the assembly devotees. All glories to the assembly devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Ki Jai. So, Hare Krishna, I'd like to welcome everyone again, and thanks for the opportunity to speak at such a, I would say, like a prestigious venue, because to speak in the presence of the Lord and also to speak from the Vyasa is considered to be something of prestige, and therefore it's a great opportunity to be able to be here and to be able to share some of the knowledge of Krishna consciousness with anyone. If anyone is here for the first time, you could show raising their hand so we could acknowledge you. Hare Krishna. Okay, so the last time that I was here, So the last time I was here, I spoke about a few topics which I just want to say like a few words on, because it's a kind of continuation. So the first time that I was here, which was like a few weeks ago, we spoke about a survey of the Vedic literature, that we should think of the Vedic literature as a very large collection of statements, almost like, I don't want to say, when you come back from the laundry, you have a lot of clothes for those who use the public laundry, and the clothes is mixed up, children's clothes, wife's clothes, husband clothes, and so on. And the only way you could make sense of it is that you have to sort it out. So when all these statements or the knowledge in the Vedic literature is sorted out, it produces something, that we mentioned. It's called the Sad Darshan, or the 6 viewpoints. And these 6 viewpoints, they are grouped into 3 dyads, or 3 groups of 2. So we have Yoga and Sankhya, we have Nyaya and Vaisheshika, and we have Purva and Uttara Mimamsa. So Purva and Uttara Mimamsa means the final deliberation of what is the actual meaning of the Vedic literatures. It is also commonly referred to as Vedanta. So what Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it falls into the category of it falls into the category of Uttara Mimamsa, which means that what we are teaching in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is a part of the final deliberation of what the Vedic knowledge really means. So last time we had mentioned that. Then I had mentioned that there are 10 ways in which we acquire knowledge. These are called the 10 pramanas. And because of redundancy and duplication, these 10 pramanas have been reduced into 3. And the three were pratyakshya, sense perception, then we have anuman, and then we have shabda or sound. So I also remember mentioning that the Vedic literature is also called Shabda Pramana, which means it is a method of knowledge that is delivered to us by sound. And if somebody is giving you something in which it is being delivered by sound, the only way you could make sense of it is that you have to have faith. Because I remember saying that if you open the Bhagavad Gita, no supporting video will fall out. The only thing you have is the words in the Bhagavad Gita. And to make use of it, we need to have faith. Without faith, it will just somehow remain as another book of the many books we come encounter of. So once we have that faith, which is the English translation of the term Shraddha. Shraddha is a Sanskrit word which means to give one's heart. That's the original word, but the word is translated into English as to mean faith. And faith, which was the last point, is faith is something everyone has. Faith is a form of decision making where we don't have perfect knowledge of the outcome. I remember giving the example of walking into this building. Nobody is 100% sure that the roof of the building will collapse or will not collapse. We do not know if it will collapse or we do not know if it will not collapse. But still we make a decision to walk into the building and sit down quietly without being worried. That is an exercise of faith. And every person, not only religious person, have faith. Sometimes it's a misunderstanding that only religious people have faith, but actually everybody have faith. When you make a choice, let us say to send a child to school, the child goes to college, there's some outcome which will happen in the future, but we don't know what that outcome is. The child could die even in their teens. So we don't know that would happen, but still we make a choice that let me do this so that we will gain this future outcome. That is an exercise of faith. So today we want to move away from that just a little bit and speak about a different topic. So today we wanted to speak about 3 different objectives. So these objectives are: one, that knowledge is produced by consciousness. This is something that maybe no other church you would go and they would actually tell you that knowledge is actually produced by consciousness. So this is one of the things that we want to discuss. The other objective is that consciousness could become unclean. And the third objective is that consciousness can be cleansed by the chanting of the holy name. Those 3 objectives. So we wanted to read a verse from Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, verse 30. What's this time? So for those who already know what is the name, the heading of that chapter with Tulsi, what's the name of that chapter? Chapter 13. Right. The name of it is Natya, the enjoyer and the consciousness. So we wanted to read from verse 30 and verse 30. So this is the verse, and I'll read the translation and Srila Prabhupada's purport. Prakritaiva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvashaha ya prasyati tatamanam akartaram sapashyati. So the translation by Srila Prabhupada is: one who can see that all activities are performed by the body which is created which is created of the material nature, and sees that the self does nothing at all, he actually sees. So this is really very powerful. He's saying that one who can see that all the activity we perform is carried out by the material nature, and he could see that the self does nothing at all, that person, Krishna is telling Arjuna that that person is the person who really sees. And then here is Srila Prabhupada's purport. This body is made by material nature under the direction of the super soul, and whatever activities are going on in respect to one's body are not his doing. Whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or distress, one is forced to do because of the bodily constitution. The self, however, is outside of all these bodily activities. This body is given according to one's past desires. To fulfill desires, one is given the body with which he acts accordingly. Practically speaking, the body is a machine described by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into a difficult situation to suffer or to enjoy. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from the bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer. So in other words, Srila Prabhupada is expanding on Krishna's verse where he's saying that one who actually not just understand, but one who actually sees. And the word see is used, the word see is actually used 2 times in the verse. Here we see one who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of the material nature, and sees that the self does nothing at all. This person actually sees. So now in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a section in the 3rd canto in which we have the teachings of Lord Kapila to Devahuti. And that section of the teaching, it has been labeled what we call what's called Sankhya. And before we get into it, first I should say that if you go on the internet and you look for Sankhya, the Sankhya you actually find is not the Sankhya that is taught by Lord Kapila. There are 2 versions of Sankhya philosophy. One is the orthodox version, which is taught by someone who is actually an atheist, because in that Sankhya philosophy there is no conception of God. But in the Sankhya, which is taught by Lord Kapila, there's a full conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if you go on the internet to look, that Sankhya is actually not the Sankhya which is taught in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it is considered to be a description of what we call the metaphysics of material nature. And the word metaphysics itself means the things which are there but is hidden from us. Right? That is actually what the prefix meta means. Meta means it is actually underlying the physical. So it is there, but it is hidden from us. So that whole section on Sankhya philosophy, it teaches the metaphysics about how the material nature comes to be, and how the self or the living being is situated in the material nature. One of the major items in that philosophy is called the doctrine of Parinam Vada. And what does Parinam Vada mean? It means that the effect, which is the world we see, is situated in the cause. For example, if you have $20, right? Right, a normal person could tell that $5 is already situated in that. You don't need, if you go to the bank and tell them give you some change, will they give you $5 and more? Yes, because even though it is $20, which is the effect we're looking at, the $5 is already situated in that $20. So from the time you ask for the change, they will give you the change. So that is the idea of Parinam Vad, that the effect is already situated in the cause. And this is how the material nature comes about. So according to this Sankhya philosophy as taught by Vaishnavas, the Prakriti or the material nature is made up of different elements. So the first 5 elements is earth, air, water, fire, and ether, which is called the Pancha Mahabhut. So you see at the top, these are the 5 gross elements. You could read the, the Sanskrit word at the side of it, but the English word is earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Then we have what is called the 5 tanmatras, or the 5 subtle elements, or is also called the 5 objects of the senses. What are these 5 objects? Taste, sight, sound, touch, and smell. These are the 5 objects of the senses. And then, beyond this, we ourselves have what is called 5 Gyan Indriyas. 5 Gyan Indriyas are the 5 senses we use to investigate the world. So what are these 5 senses we have? Can somebody tell? Everybody knows. What are the 5 senses we use to investigate the world? Okay, the eyes is one. Right, the nose, the ear, the skin, and the tongue. So those are called the Gyan Indriyas. And these senses, they come in contact with these subtle objects of the senses. Then we have what is called the 5 Karman Indriyas, or the senses we use to do work. What are these 5 senses we use to do work? It's called the arms, the legs, the mouth, the anus, and the genitals. So in order to accomplish activity, these are the 5 senses we use. The arms, the legs, the mouth, anus, and genitals, they are called the Karma Indriyas. Then Kapila, Lord Kapila goes on to mention in the 3rd canto, chapter 26, verse 10 to 14, he actually speaks and gives the details about these elements. And then in the 14th verse, he speaks about 4 internal senses. What are these 4 internal senses? He refers to the chittam, or consciousness, the buddhi, or the intelligence, the ahamkara, or egoism, and the manas, or the mind. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he distinctly tells us that consciousness is the symptom of the soul. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada actually says this, that consciousness is the symptom of the soul. What we mean is that, how do we know that the soul is present? The soul is present because of consciousness. Without consciousness, the body is dead. Without consciousness present, the body is dead. Therefore, consciousness tells us that there's something that is present in the body, and that thing is the soul. So in other words, consciousness is what we call a property or an attribute of the soul. In other words, if I want to know what something is, I have to know it through its attributes. If I want to know what a person is, I may know his gender, I may know his height, I may know his weight. All of these things are attributes of the person. So just like how the soul is something, the soul also have attributes. In fact, the soul have 21 attributes that is described in Jiva Goswami's Paramatma Sandarbha. But the one in which we have immediate access to is consciousness. In other words, everyone is aware that I am conscious. There's no living person who is not aware that he is conscious. And even now, in modern scientific evidence, it is being brought forward that even animals, they have what is called intentional consciousness. Recently, some scientists did some research, and they even discovered that bees are able to play games, just like how we might play a game of cards or Monopoly or something. Even bees, those same bees that you see flying about, they actually have a game that they're able to play. So it means that even these bees, lower than mammals, they have intentional consciousness, that they're actually aware that they could deliberately do something. They could play a game or they could not play it. So they actually are conscious with intention, because at some time they could have intention to play a game, and another time they may not choose to play the game. So now here we have something, and I just want to do a demonstration. I have here something, and I want everybody to maybe take a look at it and tell me what it is you see. Right. Okay. So we see. So here we see a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. But what I want to say is that how it is this knowledge come to us. So how it is that we know that we are actually seeing a Bhagavad Gita. So here we give a demonstration, and we want to use the example of the eye, because the eye is where what is the primary thing that is used to see the Bhagavad Gita. So what happens, this here is not a Bhagavad Gita, but it's a leaf, same example. So when a person looks at an object, let us say a leaf, right? The first thing is that light from that object travels towards the eye, and there's a layer of the eye called the cornea, which actually focuses the light onto the eye. For example, if you are going to look at the deities, the cornea will focus the light that is coming from the deities onto your eye, but the lesser details, which are like on the side, you are seeing those things on the side, they would not be the main focus of what you want to see, but they will still be present. So the cornea does the job of focusing the light. Then there's another layer called the iris, and the iris control the opening and closing of a little very small opening, which is called the pupil. And light comes in the eye, it enters the pupil, and then there's another structure that is called a lens. The lens focuses the light on something called a retina. And that retina actually takes that electrochemical signal and it takes it to the brain. All of this is happening very, very quickly. But here is where the knowledge part comes in. The only time knowledge is created when you say, I am seeing. If there is no conception that I am seeing, there is no knowledge. The eye does not see by itself. The brain does not see by itself. All it does is that it facilitates the process of seeing. But when you acknowledge or you become conscious that you are seeing the book, then the process of seeing takes place, and then you acquire the knowledge. But if there is no awareness that I am seeing, then seeing have not taken place, and there is no knowledge occurring. Therefore, the conclusion is that knowledge is really created by the consciousness, not the organs that facilitate it. Right, everybody get that? Or that was like...
One more time.
Okay. So, all right. So I'm saying if I'm looking at a book, right, the only time I get knowledge is when I become conscious of it. So light is coming into my eyes, it's passing through all the structures in the eye, and it's going to the brain, and it registers. But when, what point does the knowledge happen? The knowledge happens when I become conscious that I am seeing. At that point, the knowledge is created. Before that, only light is passing into the eyes, and the structures of the brain, they are accommodating it. But only when I become conscious that I am seeing, at that point, knowledge is created. So without consciousness, there is no knowledge. Take, for example, someone who has a stroke. Let us say somebody has a stroke and say that their hand has lost its normal function. You could squeeze that person's hand for as long as you want. That person is not aware that you are actually squeezing their hand, because of the fact that the part of the brain has become damaged, and therefore there is no information for the consciousness to read. So that person is still conscious because they could be sitting, speaking to you. So we cannot say that they are not conscious. They are conscious, but how it is that they're not aware that you are squeezing their hand or that they could move their fingers, they can't, because there's no data for the consciousness to read. So what it shows us is that knowledge comes from the consciousness, not from the information that comes into the organ. And this is really very important, because it brings us to the next thing, that consciousness can become dirty. And when I say dirty consciousness, I don't mean that somebody didn't take a shower or something like that. It has nothing to do with that. Dirty consciousness is something completely different. Now, when the senses come in contact with these different objects we mentioned, the sound, the touch, the smell, and so on, it creates something called a sanskar. A sanskar is an impression that is etched on the consciousness. Right? An alternative word or an alternative understanding of this is also called a bij, or bija, or seed. Right? So first, when we come in contact with any object, if we see it, we touch it, we smell it or taste it, it leaves an impression in the consciousness. For example, even if you were to take a plane and go to Florida, right? In the morning, you could still wake up and recall an image of that Bhagavad Gita. How come that the Bhagavad Gita is not there with you in Florida, but you're able to recall an image of that Bhagavad Gita whenever you need to? You remember I was at the temple Sunday and somebody actually showed me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, because an impression of the Bhagavad Gita is stored in the consciousness. So the Bhagavad Gita would be right here as an image in my computer. You take a plane tonight and you go to Florida, but you could recall an image of that Bhagavad Gita that you saw, because an impression of it has been stored in the consciousness. That is called bija, or is also called a sanskar, or an impression. When we act on these impressions, it becomes a habit, and that habit or tendency to act is called a vasana or vasan. So from sanskar, when we act in it, it becomes a vasan. An alternative meaning in the Gaudiya teaching is also called a kutastha, or a desire. So if I have an impression in my mind that something will make me happy, I will begin to have a desire to act on it. That desire is called kutaska. Then when we act on these desires, it creates a karmic reaction. Means that when we perform some activity, there's a result that comes with it. before the result happen, that is called aparabdha karma. And aparabdha karma, one other term for it is phalon mukha. Means that the result didn't come as yet, but it will come at some time in the future. Or meaning the word used is fructifiable, meaning that it will eventually turn into fruit. And then we have the result that has already turned into the fruit. It's called parabdha. So the body we were born into, the gender, the family, the country, all these things are actually karmic reaction that has been fructified from a past life. So therefore, we take birth in one situation. So the Shastras tell us, Brahmanda Bhamite Kuna Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Pasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. It means that we shouldn't think that this time we take birth here, but the Shastra is telling us that we are taking birth in all over the Brahmanda, all over the universe. And it goes on, Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain in the purport that sometimes we are in the upper planetary system, sometimes we are in the middle, sometimes we are in the lower. And not only that, we take birth in how many species of life? 8,400,000. What does that mean? It means that no one has any proof whether in the last 1,000 births I was actually a human being. What to speak of being born in a particular place? We don't have any proof of it, and in the future, we don't know where we will take birth. This is all the effect of Prarabdha karma. So this Prarabdha karma now, and the result, along with all these impressions, it act to create what is called hazy consciousness. Hazy consciousness means that I have so many images of so many things I have experienced. It begins to cloud my consciousness. Just like when I was with the DOE, there was this lady she was an English teacher. You know what she told me? She told me that when she doesn't like to go to her apartment. So I said, why? She says, when I go home in the evening, to get inside, I have to clear a pathway in order for her to get to where maybe her living room is. Meaning that her place was so cluttered, it was completely unpleasant even to go into her own house on a daily basis. So, when our consciousness becomes cluttered by repeated material existence over and over and over again, it becomes like the same thing. It becomes a place of unhappiness. We don't want to go there. So what we do the things we think that would make us happy, because the real place, the consciousness is so dirty that it becomes a place of unpleasant feelings, a place of unhappiness. And therefore, this is what dirty consciousness is. It has nothing to do with taking a shower. It is actually cluttering of our consciousness with the sanskars and vasanas produced by material existence over a very, very long time. And in the Harinam Chintamani, the Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he described hazy consciousness as consciousness being covered by the cloud of ignorance and the mist of anartha. So we all know that if you're in a room, which is like the field of our consciousness, and is filled with clouds and mist, would you be able to see? No. If it's filled with cloud and mist, you would not be able to see what consciousness is. And as a result of this, we are forced to, we only have material knowledge. Even if the Shastras come and give transcendental knowledge to us, we will interpret it materially, because our consciousness is only filled with material objects, and therefore anything else that is added on to it, we will interpret it in a material way. In other words, we have actually, and Krishna says this, Srila Prabhupada says this in many purport, that we have actually done this to ourselves. It's not that Krishna put us in this condition. We have actually made these choices over such a long time that we are the ones who have cluttered our own consciousness. So now we have to engage in decluttering or cleaning the consciousness. And when one cleans the consciousness, then real transcendental knowledge begins to arise in the heart. But only when the consciousness is cleansed. So here we know that Lord Chaitanya is very famous for teaching so many things about devotional service, but one of the things he did not do himself is he did not write many books. He wrote this one part of 8 verses, which we know is called the Shiksha Stakam. And in the Shiksha Stakam, the very, very first line, goes like this. And I think maybe somebody could say it, because I think devotees very much aware of what this first line is. So Tulsi, can you tell us? Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Maha. Okay, right. Okay, so in the first stanza, it actually glorifies the holy name, and it says, the holy name cleans the mirror of the consciousness of the emotional inclinations of the great fire of conditioned life acquired across many births. So in other words, what is really saying in simple English is that if we engage sincerely in chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it gradually cleans the consciousness, literally cleans the consciousness, means it removes the cluttering, it removes ignorance or avidya, it removes the anartha, and we begin to experience what clean consciousness is. And again, I'm going to say we begin to experience it, not just read about it, because it's, so anybody could go and read this verse, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. But when we clean the consciousness, we have an opportunity to experience what clean consciousness is. And clean consciousness is actually what is the natural attribute of the soul. And when clean consciousness comes, then it is we really begin to understand that I am not this body. Before this, we are thinking I am male, female, whatever. We are thinking I am this body. But when clean consciousness arises, then we begin to understand that I am not this body. I think maybe it's 7:28, so we're supposed to stop at 7:30, so I could stop now, and I'm sure maybe somebody want to ask 1 or 2 questions. I know Tulsi have questions. What? Cheto, sorry. Okay. So does anybody have any question? We could probably take one. Yeah. We can become pure, but how to stay pure? Srila Prabhupada give the example that when you are dirty, you stay in the shower. And when you stay in the shower one day, you will discover that you have become clean. But so you had to stay in the shower. Stay in the shower mean that we shouldn't think that I could chant Hare Krishna one time and then next week I do something else. It's not like that. And Lord Chaitanya, he recommend these five processes: Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, Bhagavad Shavana, Murti Seva, Mathura, Vash. So if we stay in the association of devotees and we do these 5 things, then eventually we will become clean. It's just like we always hear that people says that some people have the tendency, if they have a problem, they tend to give up. But if you always strive, eventually striving will become part of what you are. Giving up don't have to be part of what you are. But sometimes many people choose to give up and then give up become what they are. But you could do the opposite. Why not continue striving, and eventually striving becomes part of what you are. So in the same way, if you stay in the process, as Srila Prabhupada said, eventually you will become clean because the holy name cleanses the consciousness. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Huh? Fix it? Oh, I don't have any more. Off. Number 5? Yeah, that's how the Gyan Indriyas come in contact with the subtle elements. The nose come in contact with Gandha, the tongue come in contact with the taste, and that is where consciousness is able to understand or become aware. That is knowledge. Without consciousness, there is no knowledge. Hare Krishna.
Very nice explanation.
Hare Bol.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna.
You put it nicely, everything.
Huh?
Everything you put it nicely. That's nice. Good talk.
Hare Bol. Hare Krishna. Okay. Hare Krishna Mataji. Yeah? Yeah? That's so nice.
Hare Krishna, appreciation to you.
Thank you.
That's a very deep subject.
Huh?
That's a very deep subject.
Yes, of course it is.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
like
of course.
something we deal with every single day.
Yeah, of course.
Every second.
Yeah, of course, every
Yeah.
second, of course. But usually because we are so busy,
Yeah.
we don't take the time.